This is The David Lehman Show.
WJUL Radio, the jewel of Lake Chatuge, 97.5, and WJULradio.com, all of which will get you to some excellent programming out there. When the shadows appear to grow darker, you may rest assured that the light casting them is growing brighter. Today, we'll be shining our lights on a GOP dream team. Also, the mess of laws, more coming your way via Obamacare, but just in general, a mess of laws that keep growing and growing. And finally, a revisit to, get this, birthers, truthers, and spreaders. Trifecta of conspiracy theory, no, Paul?
Put on your tinfoil hats, people.
They may need them. As a radio guy, guys, it's a good idea to be a good speaker. It's a good idea to speak good.
You got to speak good.
You got to speak good. And I don't think in my whole life I've seen a better speaker than Mario Cuomo. Have you ever heard Mario Cuomo speak? Seen him like kind of manipulate and control an audience out there?
Not at length, no. But he comes from a long line of
talkers.
Yeah, fork-tongued
lots of
devil.
Lots of people in the Cuomo family have spoken through the years. A long family history of speaking.
I see. Eloquency.
But the thing is he's captivating. But it's not his speech strategy so much as it's kind of like a speech tactic, I think, that it is he uses. At any rate, when you watch Mario Cuomo speak, what he does is he's got a couple points that he knows he's going to use before he engages with the audience that he knows are going to resonate well with the audience. It's very important to know your audience, know your enemy, this kind of thing. So he has the points lined up, not together, but separated, and he'll lay down that first point, and the applause will start, and he'll stop them in mid-applause, and he'll go on in that very just kind of dry Mario Cuomo way. And he'll go on, he'll hit that second point, and they're clapping a little bit louder this time, okay? And he cuts them off. It's like clappus interruptus out there, and it gets frustrating for an audience psychologically, apparently. And so by the time he's at his third, or if he's got four things that he thinks can resonate well, by the time he gets to the fourth one, they've got kind of like pent-up applause. So at the end of his speech, people are standing up in their chairs, screaming wildly with eyes rolling back in their head. What a brilliant strategy.
I didn't know you put that much thought into Mario Cuomo's speaking style, but it definitely, when it comes to the uneducated masses, you definitely can use a lot of tricks.
There are uneducated masses? Where are they? Where are they hiding?
Yeah, just look at the polls.
I didn't put all that much time into investigating speakers per se, but the ones that seem to, like when you think of a great speaker, the top 5-10 people that come into mind, I'm like, okay, what is it about their speaking? There just must be something different. Same thing as I read a whole big book on like the greatest speeches of all time. Some of them were pretty darn good, and some of them were pretty darn bad.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
That's maybe a classic soundbite. I don't know if that's a speech.
That whole speech, have you read that speech?
I don't think I read that.
Read that and get back to me on it. It was outstanding.
Really?
Yes.
Well,
it
Reagan,
was a tour de force.
But you're partisan, Paul. You love Ronald Reagan.
Oh, I see. You get to talk about Cuomo like, as a professor, being a professor here, and I bring up Reagan, it's only because I'm a conservative. That you're going to discount what
you are sharp today. I was looking to break your chops here on something. I had to reach.
My fuse is short
You're
today.
not going
you better
for
watch
it
your
at
step.
all. No doubt, we have all heard about the Sikh shootings in Michigan, and aside from the tragedy and the senseless of it, there's kind of a double whammy in that our ignorance, like our national ignorance and distaste for radical Islam, has Indian Sikhs as mistaken identity collateral damage because they wear that turban.
Yeah, they definitely stand out, but it was Wisconsin, by the way, point of order.
Okay.
So we want to be accurate. We don't want to be sullying the Sikhs in Minnesota right now.
And which is not the intent. I'm just trying to display that's why they're collateral damage. They're not, no one's actually after them. They are very pacifist and very nice. And so obviously I don't like that. And for them, what can you say? It sucks. However, the Indian nation starts lecturing us on making the USA safer for their folks that electively moved here. And we've got a problem. We're going to have to part company on that. Did you know India's out there making all sorts of noise about you need to rein in, like lecturing to us, kind of like we do everybody else. Right. Lecturing, you need to rein in your the guns in that country, and you need to make it safer for our Sikhs living over there. And I tell you what.
Yeah, I think that was primarily for lip service. They're just doing it. They don't mean, they could care less.
The Indian government is encouraging gun control laws in America as if that would even help. And they're very upset, which we learned from an apologetic meeting with Hillary Clinton. First of all, the Secretary of State's message to the Indians should be a very short and real succinct one. Up yours. And that goes for your immigrants as well. And if they don't like our gun rights, then they can go home and live unarmed in your filth and your fear and your feral dogs.
Woo! Yeah, talk about somebody with a short fuse today. My goodness, you're fired up too, Dave.
It's just things that get under my skin. And that feral dog thing, I love dogs, of course. But they've got... there's no country in the world that has as many stray dogs as India. They count like in 10 millions, free-roaming dogs. And they bite millions of people annually, including vast numbers of children. An estimated 20,000 people die every year from rabies infections from those dog bites there, which is more than a third of all global rabies deaths. So if the Indians were willing to fight for their own freedom and to carry guns, they could save tens of thousands of lives simply by shooting these feral dogs that attack them. But they'd rather run their mouths, trying to interfere with how Americans live in the USA than do anything about the squalor, filth, and tyranny in their own country.
Yeah, clean up your own backyard first, India.
But before you go casting aspersions on other folks, that's exactly right. The Obama administration should agree to protect the Sikhs by putting them on a jetliner straight back to India.
Well, the Sikhs, you've got these people, like you said, are peace-loving. There are, whoever this guy was who shot these people, he obviously got his news from CNN or MSNBC and probably just assumed, put two and two together. That's crazy things happen.
It seems to me, regardless of the reason, look, tragedies happen and they happen every day all over the place. What I don't like is another country lecturing my country on how to run its internal affairs. These guys, their people left their country. Why do people leave other countries and come to America? For opportunity.
Right. We're by far.
You know what? Create some opportunity in your land and everyone won't need to run away.
Right.
But you can't in clean conscience be yelling at other countries, telling them to clean up their act when your act is...
Well, they have, they're too big for their britches. They've had an economy going at a pretty good clip, second to us and China and a couple other countries, but they are definitely growing. But they are, talk about a country with haves and have-nots. There is.
But India is on the move, man. And, everyone's not as uncompassionate as David Lehman and the David Lehman Show is. But this does go to show how another nation's interference into our country's affairs is vehemently disliked. To be fair, as we have been ruling by edict about how other countries should handle their internal affairs, is it any wonder why the majority of nations hold us in contempt? Believe it or not, the citizens of India are just as proud and nationalistic about their land as we are of ours. So we can argue that the Indian worldly contribution thus far has been a claim to ignoble fame. About how proficient they are at breeding and multiplying population, but they are, no doubt, currently on the rise. Less and less will these nations be willing to acquiesce to what they see as American imperialism, and more they're going to be rebutting our suggestions and fighting our proclamations. Indeed, the landscape is changing, Paul, not just because America is on the decline or on the wane, but because China, India, Brazil, Indonesia, et cetera, everybody else is on the move. They're all on the rise. And in summation to that little diatribe, I'm sorry, they really did get on my skin. All I will say is that so far as the U.S. is concerned, it's been a good run.
Well, Dave, all right. Yeah, everybody's on the rise, but have you seen the ghost cities that China has been building up until recently? Entire cities, say downtown Atlanta, built with streets and lights and
Nobody there.
Nobody there. Why, Dave?
I will tell you
Is that
this.
a country on the rise who builds empty cities? Are you telling me
Well,
that
maybe-
we should be envious of people like China?
Maybe they've got something planned. Maybe there's a reason those cities are there because they know something. I'll tell you this, the Chinese plan 10 years ahead, and they can do so because their politicians do not have to get elected. They're in there for 10 years. At the end of the 10 years, whoosh, out they all go. A whole new crop come in. So they can plan 10 years ahead without having to worry what the hoi polloi says about what they're doing in the process. They don't have to do these little short-term gains and these little handouts, this little crap that the rest of the elected leaders in the world have to do. No, they can plan for 10 years. And believe me, China cares about China, and they're smart. You don't disagree with that? They're planning? You do disagree.
I do disagree because you sit here and give them an assumptive, brilliant strategy of building an entire cities. These are not just one city, and they hide this from the rest of the world. They don't want these pictures getting out, and you're trying to tell me there's some kind of master plan that makes sense in?
No, I'm not talking about the brilliant
You're
plan
talking
as opposed to the city. I'm talking about them making alliances with most of the African nations to secure minerals and natural.
The rare earth crap. Yeah, we need to have our own rare. That's another thing we need to search
crap.
for.
They're smart and they're planning ahead. They don't need this stuff necessarily
yes.
right away. They make pacts with Brazil and basically they're slowly, quietly out there, and they're kind of big.
Yeah, they're communists. I understand the concept of spreading out with their tentacles, but what I'm talking about is that there's an inherent, just like we were talking about tear down this wall, that was the beginning of the end of the Russian Empire, and the reason why is because they were putting all their money into the military, and there was this facade that this great Russian bear would always be there, and as a counterweight to us, capitalists.
Yeah, American hegemony around
Exactly, however you would pronounce that. But he, basically, it was a fraud, and we outspent them. And it's because we outspent them is because we had massive growth at that time.
Right.
And that's the one thing we don't have now.
Russia
and
could
that's
not
temporary. That is temporary, and that can be turned around. So you're talking about a decline and how great how
Paul,
India and all these are on the rise. They are not.
As the rest of the world rises, I can see you are going to be scratching and clawing.
They're already falling back. Like you talk about India, they have an infrastructure. What was it? Almost 700 million people without power. Mm-hmm. That's a country on the rise?
It's on the rise because in the last 8 years, more people have come out of poverty in the nation of India than in their last 50 years. That's a huge, we're talking millions of people over there.
And guess why?
They have
the primary driver of their growth is us.
It's a good idea.
And why are they suffering now? Us.
So we're good cop and bad cop?
Exactly. Okay. When we come back,
isn't that convenient?
When this turns around.
What turns around?
This economy.
Let me guess, under Romney? This economy.
It's not going to happen under Obama. So any other alternative will do.
I don't think though that we've gone as far down in this economy as we're going to go. I believe there's more to go. We have another bubble to deal with. You realize that the student loan bubble is going to be big and tough. And
see, they haven't been selling those on securities out there on the open markets. There's no, real estate or student loan bubble that's going to affect securitized loans and AAA bond ratings.
Securitized.
Yeah, all that stuff. The Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac stuff.
Yes.
There's not an arm like that, so it's going to be limited in scope. Yes, these people are getting free rides, and they're probably going to have to write it off, and all the student loan companies are going to take a bath.
Yeah, but there really is no such thing as a free ride. The money is going to have to come from somewhere. I mean,
because it's guaranteed, but we won't have the money. But again, growth is the only way out of our problem.
Oh, I thought it was TARP and QE1 and QE20 and all the rest of it. No, huh?
Well, you're preaching to the choir
it's
here.
Growth, right? Yeah, no, yeah. I know we agree. I know we agree in this.
Yeah, I even was against Bush doing the bailout. And they all talk about, Obama saved GM. As
GM
if
like
restructuring.
Million. No, the GM's getting hammered.
Right. Well, their
government
stock will
motors.
never get the money back. They were just talking today about this is the new huge thing that they won't investigate, and that's the Delphi, those 20,000 pensioners that was a non-union part of GM, and at the time they said, oh, it was this board, that blue ribbon panel that decided, it just happened to be that all the union people got their pensions trued up and saved, while the people, non-union people, got their pensions evaporated. And at the time, Geithner says, that was not the government. That was this panel. And
It's so
now
funny you think it's me. It's not me. It's you.
Yeah.
Facially, you're very boring.
Nervous? Nope.
Not me, Geithner. Nope.
So so that guy, that's another one of these scandals will probably come out after he's gone. Obama's gone in November, but it is huge when it comes to those kind of GM would have, if we restructured him, if they say, Romney would have let him go bankrupt. Well,
but
it's called reorganization.
Well, and over time, you are supposed to let things that are naturally going to die.
That's right. Do we still have buggy whip manufacturers in this country? If not, they're probably being made by one guy in a garage somewhere, but we didn't save that industry.
I don't know, but speaking of buggy whipping, did your wife hear what you said? Did you get buggy whipped by Catherine last week during the show when you were mentioning how much you like to watch the Olympics and why?
Yeah, well, thankfully, I shoot her out of the room, before she heard that part coming up. So
you got out unscathed, safe to say, yes?
Thank goodness, yes. So I can continue to enjoy my Olympics.
I haven't watched all that much of the Olympics. Did you happen to see Selena and the Crip dance, though?
I did.
Walk?
I tuned in just as she won and saw that. I didn't know what it was referred to.
Right.
And I didn't know what, the issues behind it.
The Crip Walk is from Compton, California. It was actually a Crip dance, the Crips and the Bloods and the gangs and stuff.
So she threw a shout out.
Something along those lines. And I don't think those stuff Europeans enjoyed it all that much. This is WJUL Radio, 97.5. This is the David Lehman Show, and we will be right back.
What walks downstairs alone or in pairs and makes a slinkety sound? A spring, a marvelous thing. Everyone knows it's Slinky. It gives a big lift when wrapped as a gift, a very likable toy. It's falling in place, brings smiles to your face, something kids can enjoy.
See, Paul, you're allowed to grin. You're allowed to laugh even when Slinky is playing. I haven't heard that.
Takes you back.
I haven't heard that commercial in years. I mean, it was got 70s, no?
Yes, you reactivated that part of my brain, Dave. Thank you.
Welcome back, WJUL Radio. This is the David Lehman Show here with Paul Riley, hopefully entertaining and informing you. And now we have something that's, I don't know, I guess I would call it a little light, but we're going to be reviewing some Georgia laws specifically. Not all of them we can be proud of. First, though, there was in Wisconsin years ago I don't even know what you would call it, but just some sort of meet. It was like Meet Your Local Politician Day. Suggested a boy there for this. They were 8th graders, so Paul, if I'm not giving enough background, say so. I'm just launching into this thing, and you're sitting over there quiet as a church mouse.
Well, I wanted to know where it was going.
Dave, where was that happening?
Dave, where was that?
Thank you, Paul. This was in Wisconsin. I think they were 8th grade. How old are you in 8th grade, roughly?
13.
13 or so. So the Meet Your Politician Day comes in, and one of the kids suggested a law to have to strap your dog in a seatbelt so his head couldn't be out the window. And that was apparently the best particular suggestion that 8th grade class had come up with. Now, I don't condemn the kids for that. They're just kids after all. But their civics teacher, if there even is one at that age, should be flogged in the market square. And the reason the students don't know what freedom means is because the adults don't know what freedom means. Or if they do, they're not working in public education. I mean, can you imagine? It's almost as if the local politician was coming in, and the whole class was like trying to get together and to think of new laws to restrict everybody's freedom. It's like that was the goal.
Well, I mean, when it comes to politicians, I mean, that's what they think they're sent there for, is to make more regulations.
Thank you. That's exactly right.
Otherwise, they're not doing the
people's work. How about for every new law enacted, 2 get taken off the books? And if you don't think we can do that, have a listen to a couple of these. Laws in Georgia. Donkeys may not be kept in bathtubs. This is a law on the books in the state of Georgia.
But it's for the donkeys.
Though being forced to close your business is bad enough, Athens Clarke County forces one to obtain a license before holding a going out of business sale. Section 1449, profanity over the telephone. It shall be unlawful for any person in the operation of any telephone installed within the city to make use of any vulgar vituperation or profane language into and over such telephone. The fine for waving a gun in public is higher than actually shooting it. Putting out poison. Section 5-2. It shall be unlawful for any person to scatter or put out otherwise distribute on his premises within the city any poison in any form or manner whatsoever, which is or may be likely sufficiently lethal or of such strength as to cause death to any animal or fowl without first obtaining a permit to do so from the chief of police. So if you're putting out rat poison in your house because you had an unwanted guest there, have you ever had a rat in your house?
No, don't know what you're talking about, Dave.
You ever put poison down and get rid of that rat, Paul?
I recommend against it.
You use the neck snapper? What do you do?
You do the neck snapper, yes. Because you don't want to poison a little booger because it takes a little while before they croak and they could be inside your wall. So just, I heard it. I knew a guy who had a problem. Who knew a guy who poisoned a rat and it was in their wall and it stunk to high heaven for 3 months.
You had to talk to a guy. You had to go talk to a man about a dog, which was really about a rat.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Now I'm getting it. Delightful. And Georgia operates its own lottery, but it protects its citizens by making it illegal to promote a private lottery. And for my favorite, ready for this one? In Atlanta, it's against the law to tie a giraffe to a telephone pole or a street lamp. Okay, so my point being here with all those little cutesy laws, and they're not really cutesy. That's probably the wrong word. But it's that there are so many bad laws and so many ridiculous laws and so many freedom oppressing laws, which I think in nature most laws are, we need some to get along and whatever, but most laws are designed basically to do a favor for one group versus another, to give an edge to one or the other, but the bottom line is they always rob me and you and the citizens of their freedom of movement and freedom of decision. Most of the laws, not all of them. So, is it such a bad idea to think that with every new law that these jokers want to put on the books, that 2 need to come off? That's how we do it, and we shrink the size and scope and force?
That would make too much sense, and I think the officer that's on the giraffe patrol unit would be against it. The Fraternal Order of Giraffe Enforcement Laws.
Police, yes.
Yes.
I don't think I donated to them this year, and I darn sure intended to.
And say they have a constituency now, Dave, okay? They have so this guy, his job depends on trying to find those stray giraffes. And getting a king's ransom
they're so hard to see too because they're so small and just infinitesimal creatures. It's so hard to track them down.
Those and the pink elephants.
The Code of Laws of the United States of America is a compilation and codification of the general and permanent federal laws of the U.S. It contains 51 titles. The main edition is published every 6 years by the Office of the Law Review Council in the House of Representatives, and cumulative supplements are published every year. The current edition of the code was published in 2006, and according to the U.S. Government Printing Office, get this, it's over 200,000 pages long. Of those traceable laws, because they get just bogged down in the muck and the obfuscation and all the rest, Paul, just take a stab how many, and as of that writing, and those are just like federal government laws, it doesn't include your state and local and municipality and nonsense. Take a guess how many laws are on those books.
4.2 million.
32 million.
Wow.
32.
Ignorance of the law is not an excuse.
You know
Dave.
what? Ignorance of the law may be no excuse, but sadly, ignorance is an excuse to make laws, apparently.
No, I mean, I'm being facetious. When you have that many laws, you are definitely breaking the law probably and don't even realize it.
You're absolutely right. And John Baker, a retired Louisiana State University law professor, said there is no one in the United States over the age of 18 who cannot be indicted for some federal crime. Is that not mind-boggling? But it's a free country, though, right? Oh, it's a free country.
If somebody is getting prosecuted on some of these antiquated laws, I know you're talking about. You're right, though, Dave. There are too many laws. You're absolutely right.
But it's not just that they may be selectively applied. It's that the audacity to make, for instance, here's a good for instance. You ever use a can of spray paint?
I've been known to. I'm a tagger.
Yeah, okay. Well, when I look at you, I see kind of a spray paint guy.
Yeah,
the visage, your countenance, it just screams, I use spray paint. At any rate, I just thought I'd confirm.
It's an art kind of program with the gang I'm in.
Point being, if you look on the back, it's a federal crime to use a can of spray paint any closer than 6 inches to what it is you're spray painting. Don't believe me? Don't take my word for it. Go to your garage, grab a can of spray paint, and look on the back of it. Now, is that anywhere remotely within the proper function of government to tell you how close to an object you can use spray paint? And we've got a federal law.
Oh, well, yeah. It's,
poor Uncle Bernie, he was hauled in before the federal judges and sentenced to 20 years in prison because apparently he spray painted a new dollhouse 5 inches from the source as opposed to 6.
What are you in for?
Yeah, right. A dollhouse sprayer.
I let the Krylon run.
You're listening to News Talk WJUL. This is the David Lehman Show, and right now Paul and I are going to, and you, let's hope, we're going to dive into the GOP dream team that was kind of floating around the internet. I don't know if it reached everyone's mailbox, and of course there's probably a lot of mailboxes with the blocks up, like anything GOP, out it goes, or crazy Aunt Esther, anything she sends is usually has that FW in front of it. Sphincter tightens up. Like, I don't want to read this, but
chain letter.
Yeah, let me hope she didn't leave me a note. Paul, any opening comments on this GOP dream team?
Well, I definitely when I read it sounds on paper incredible. Choosing these.
You look incredible on paper.
Yeah, I have a voice or a face for radio. But it was. I mean, it really. There's a pretty deep bench, and I hope that Romney picks half the people that this dream team that was. I don't know who wrote it. But,
I don't know who wrote it either. I do have a list in front of me though, and tell you what, we'll go shooting duck style here. Okay. Alan West for vice president. Having Congressman West in the VP slot makes him a triple threat and a VP who will redefine the role. As a president, he would attend to the regular duties and be a heartbeat away from the presidency. He would also act as a second Secretary of State in difficult diplomatic negotiations, and Vice President West would work in concert with the Secretary of Defense to realign our military and redefine its roles.
Well, they also mentioned Petraeus, and I think having a military guy in the vice presidential slot, makes a lot of sense. And Alan West is talk about a fiery speaker. That guy is not afraid of anybody, and he would definitely splinter a lot of the African American community when it comes to his viewpoints, and they would definitely siphon some votes away. I would say good 3 to 5%.
You think that's a good suggestion for that slot?
Absolutely.
Secretary of State. This is probably my favorite one, John Bolton.
Yes.
As a former ambassador to the UN, there is nobody with a better handle on the world's issues and more familiar with the players. Bolton is tough, straightforward, and likely not out there to appease anyone. And here's just a side question. Condoleezza Rice, who was Secretary of State under Bush, and Hillary Clinton now, are both at a disadvantage on the world stage as Secretaries of State. Or Secretary of States? No, Secretaries of State. Why? Do you think?
What do you mean? I mean, I didn't.
They both, despite both of their abilities,
right?
When they're out in the world representing the United States, they're at a disadvantage.
Oh, you're saying culturally when it comes to, like, you're in Saudi Arabia and Egypt and all those other countries.
Right. You're on the right track. Yes, that's because they're female.
Right, yeah. And Madeleine Albright, wasn't she?
Yeah, what is Savage calls her Madeleine Halfbright. It's kind of entertaining.
So, yeah, I guess, when you talk about Western or Eastern cultures, they definitely are, they're rocking
down.
It out like it's 1899.
They are. So even though we're trying to be this, progressive, moving country, since the rest of the world doesn't necessarily abide by that stuff, is it really in our best interest to put a woman in that role who, the second she gets out there, the Indians, as the example from earlier, look down their noses. So we're already at a negotiating disadvantage. We're already at a diplomatic disadvantage simply by gender, by the nature of the gender.
Well, I can definitely see the limitations it causes, but, you're never going to get anybody besides maybe me to say, yes, women shouldn't be in that role.
Well, that's enough. You rule by edict. That's cool.
Yes. So it is said, so it shall be written.
So I certainly like John Bolton for that.
He's awesome.
The VP stage, who else? Sarah Palin, Secretary of Energy. Palin's directive set us on a path toward energy independence in 10 years. Anyone more invested in that goal? No one I can think of. Anyone who is more knowledgeable or adept. Now, of course, the left are probably going to be wetting their pants over that. The venom for Sarah Palin out there, I've never really quite understood. I mean, they being mostly the left, just absolutely loathe her. Why?
Because to them, she's indicative of the brain-dead right women. They can't understand why women would say that they're for women's rights and all this, but you're a conservative, so basically that means that you are against feminist ideals.
But there are
it just drives them nuts because, and also on top of it, because she's gorgeous, so they can't stand that either.
You know what? I'm going to take this clip also. I'm going to send this to you. Actually, I'm not going to send it to your wife. I'm just going to hold these clips in reserve and say, Paul, I'm going to make
She's gorgeous. She's a pretty lady.
Yeah, she's a very pretty lady. But there are other pretty ladies that are conservative that do not receive the
Well, she had the audacity to try to run for vice president, a heartbeat away, like you said.
She was picked. She was chosen.
You decide to, and yeah, absolutely. And if you're asked, then most of the time the people will say yes. There's not many people.
I don't think Petraeus is going to say yes. I don't think he's got political aspirations.
I agree. I mean, he doesn't, unless he's kind of like the Dick Cheney role, where he never plans on running after 8 years of Romney. The best case scenario. So, I can see him serving his country. I can see Romney playing that card on him, and it would be tough for him to say no.
True.
But if he knew he was getting out to 4 to 8 years, and that, I think he would be great. It's got to be.
It just, as a human being, it just has to be tempting. And speaking of Petraeus, the Dream Team has him as Secretary of Defense. obviously thing. Attorney General Pam Bondi. I'm not familiar with her. Are you?
Me neither. I don't know her.
Okay, they said she's a no-nonsense fighter who has taken on the current administration over Obamacare and will clean out the corruption rampant in that office. Maybe. Secretary of the Treasury, Michelle Bachmann.
Oh, that's another one they'd go.
Oh, they would go bonkers.
No,
for.
they would
I
spit
know.
nails on that one. They talk again. Attractive, smart.
Did you personally
believes
like
in God.
Michelle Bachmann?
What about her?
Did you personally like her?
Yeah, I personally think she's great.
I did too. And of course, something that makes me very happy, Ron Paul in the Fed.
Yay!
As president of the Fed. Oh, Daddy likes that a lot. And Governor Bobby Jindal, Secretary of the Interior. So, folks, that is, last but not least, and perhaps the best one, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, Department of Homeland Security.
Oh, yeah.
This is the David Lehman Show, WJUL Radio. We will be right back. 2 minutes. Hang tight.
How much you got, Gorilla, in the window?
When marimba rhythms start to play,
How much you got, Gorilla, in the window?
dance with me, make me sway, like a lazy ocean hugs the shore. Hold me close, sway me more.
Sing, Paul, you know you want to.
No, thank you.
Oh, come on. He's such a big chicken. WJUL Radio, this is the David Lehman Show. Welcome back. We were discussing, before we left, the GOP Dream Team. Some people, of course, would quickly ascribe it to the bowels of nightmares.
Or fantasy
as
land.
dreams or fantasy. But a brief rundown, and then we'll get Paul's opinion on that. Alan West versus Joe Biden, Bolton versus Hillary Clinton, Sarah Palin versus Stephen Chu, General Petraeus versus Leon Panetta, Pam Bondi versus Eric Holder, frankly, Howdy Doody versus Eric Holder, Michelle Bachmann versus Tim Geithner, Ron Paul versus Ben Bernanke, boy, that'd just be a whip. Oh, that'd be a whip up. Sheriff Joe Arpaio versus Janet Napolitano. Oh, my goodness. Now, it's bold, brash, and completely against any business as usual strategy. The only issue, just give me 1 second, I know you're chomping. The only issue I see with this, and it's a biggie, is that what the people want and deserve is far different from what the establishment wants and is going to give us. Economically and most every other way, Romney will be Obama 2.0, in my opinion. Voting for evil A over evil B is still endorsing a demon. It's still a vote for evil. That Mittens was everyone's 14th best choice is kind of a little import, as he'll kowtow to the war machine, the banking interest, Wall Street, etc., just like Obama before him and Bush before him and Clinton before him, etc., etc. It seems readily apparent that the answer to when are people going to learn is a resounding never.
Well, the time will tell. You know, it's coming up here pretty quick. The convention's coming up, and you know, of course, he will announce vice president. Whether or not he starts picking a cabinet, which has never been done.
Picking a cabinet before you go in?
Yeah, that's the novel thing about
Yes,
this.
it
So
is.
I wouldn't expect that. That's not just because the war machine, it doesn't sign off and triplicate on that. It could be because,
May I see your pink sheet, please, sir?
Yes, please press hard.
Right. So he wants to have all these different people. Excuse me for interrupting. He wants to have all these different people. He wants to have the cabinet essentially all running basically with him, like a moving force of 6 or 8 or 10 people.
It makes sense to me because he needs help with momentum, and he is.
Oh, much more than that.
Well, listen, he's gotten a hell of a lot better compared to the last, go around.
Yes, I agree.
And I think even half, up until the first part of the year, he was looking like the old mid. But now, things have turned around. They're bringing in tons of money, Dave, tons of money. They're crushing Obama, and that's the reason why Obama's trying to get that spend out now in those swing states, because they think it's going to come down to one county in Ohio or something. So they're spending all they are trying to just ruin his name. Going to the lowest common denominator because it's always worked for them.
Right.
That's how Obama got in everything he's ever been elected for. He has used, the worst tactics, releasing sealed divorce records and just trashing people right at the last minute. So in that respect, this is just, business as usual for him.
Business as usual, yes.
And I can't believe people still fall for this stuff, but he's definitely,
It's a concerted effort. It's not just that they're falling. And speaking of playing dirty, I heard The Donald on Greta Van Susteren, and his advice, which it's the Donald, we knew this would be it, but basically is saying it's time to fight fire with fire. And Chicago politics is a nasty, nasty business over there. And
right.
Nobody ruled nasty Chicago politics like Barack Obama has, and now, of course, Rahm Emanuel.
Right, and Dave Axelrod, and the guy who went to prison, Rezko, they gave him that sweetheart land deal. I mean, the guy is, he uses these tactics to cover so Romney doesn't have time to go after him, like his, Columbia Records and his, the economy, everything that he's done wrong, he's trying to take everybody off topic with these bright, shiny objects.
Right. Okay, well, thank you. I wanted to hear what you thought about that.
Well, and you got it.
Okay. I'd like to talk now, if we may, about birthers, truthers, and spreaders. And, well, I guess we'll just start with the birthers. The term birther is a label to describe a large amount of Americans who do not believe the president is a natural-born citizen. From his Indonesian roots to his old name, Barry Soetoro, a current middle name of Hussein, sealed college records, a Connecticut school, a Connecticut Social Security card. What else? He refused to release a Hawaiian birth certificate until the Donald confronted the administration. Lots of these other, I guess we'll call them odd anomalies with this guy, has folks highly skeptical. Now, I'm not really in the mood to investigate this past point, but basically the point of the following, it's almost an unbelievable revelation, this one aspect of how birthers came to be birthers and how the PPP, which is the public polling policy, the public policy polling, some crazy acronym, conducts surveys of who believes what and why. So this survey conducted deep testing into the birther beliefs and concluded that, get this, a decent amount of respondents didn't believe Hawaii, where President Obama was born, is part of the United States at all. And that's why some of the numbers went up. Now, I'm sure that's just music to leftists' ears, like, look how ignorant they are. Right. So some of the numbers for those was those who doubt the president's contention that it really is an American is based on the idea that they didn't know where Hawaii is. Good grief. I mean, I don't weep for the future. I can weep right now for the present. That's just, it's disgusting. And also, if you remember back a few years ago, Paul, there was just an ultra embarrassing story where a couple from New Mexico were trying to acquire tickets to an event when the Olympics were here. And the gal on the phone said they had to call the international branch of ticket purchases. Apparently, she was unaware that New Mexico is a state. Instead, she thought it was an entire other country. You don't recall that incident? I was like bowing my head in shame.
Oh yeah. I remember that. I remember when I went to Mexico and my location of birth was Washington D.C. and she didn't recognize that. She was looking for a state.
Oh.
So
District of Columbia?
Yeah, it's D.C. I was like, District of Columbia, and she didn't even know what I was talking about.
Is that in Canada?
And I told her to look at the White House, and that's where it's at.
Now, the truthers, on the other hand, are a label given to those who believe that the destruction of the towers on 9/11 was basically an inside job done to us and by us. It was George Bush's way to get the U.S. into war with the Middle East and, as it turns out, anywhere else on the globe. The truther movement challenges, I believe, are just our most fundamental beliefs about our government. Paul, what do you know and believe about that possibility?
Well, the fact that they portray Bush as such a buffoon and somebody who, snorted coke through college and got out, dodged the Air
Force. Through the school? That must have been an awful lot. You mean it was a whole big thing that went through the school?
That's right.
Wow. I mean, that's like an avalanche or a snowfield worth of coke. He must have had very big nostrils.
Yeah, so when it comes to all that stuff. So how could George Bush, the world's biggest idiot, pull off a conspiracy that would have taken thousands of participants, and yet not one of them has come out to say, even in shadow, with their voice altered. I haven't seen one of them yet.
Well, I saw someone running with the shadow in the night, but that may be different, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay,
I think so.
Good. I want you to listen to this next clip. It's from NIST, the National Institute for Standards and something. But they were the ones that were investigating basically the engineering behind the falling of Tower 7, the Twin Towers. And you're going to hear the director here now.
Fall time would be an object that has no structural components below it.
Sunder's original remarks make sense under the assumption of a natural collapse. Anything at an elevated height has gravitational potential energy. If it falls and none of the energy is used for other things along the way, all of that energy is converted into kinetic energy, the energy of motion, and we call it free fall. If any of the energy is used for other purposes, there will be less kinetic energy, so the fall will be slower. In the case of a falling building, the only way it can go into free fall is if an external force removes the supporting structure. None of the gravitational potential energy of the building is available for this purpose, or it would slow the fall of the building. The fact of free fall by itself is strong evidence of explosive demolition.
Interesting.
Yeah, how old? When did this come out?
This came out almost immediately after, as soon as they started investigating the how and why of the Twin Towers. Now, there are frankly, though, many other things that don't quite add up in the events of that day, and I still wonder basically how a plane's trajectory was not derailed when it was on a collision course for the Pentagon. Surely that's a no-fly zone, right? However, let's look at the results of that day, and not the detailed events, but as the results, because the results can make clear motive. Like, here's what's resulted. Now I can see why they would want those results. The details, like the falling of the building, this kind of thing, we'll put it to the side for
Details, schmetels, yes.
We're at war, and it's a war that does not and will not end, since there is no barometer by which to claim victory, unless you think there is. Is there?
What war are you talking about, Dave?
Well, I'll give you a hint. It's a war against a fictional enemy. Ringing a bell? It's a war on terror.
Right.
Right? Terror's a tactic, as you know. It's not an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
So how can a war end when you can't defeat the enemy?
Are we out of Iraq?
Yeah, but we're in 6 other places, so what's the difference?
Well, as long as we're mopping up in other areas, we do have the propensity of leavings, these, if you're talking about the industrial complex, driving our economy, and that's the reason why we go to war, there is a certain amount of the economy that does benefit from.
You know what? It's not worth it in lives and treasures, in my opinion. Anyway, it's calling terrorism an enemy is akin to like starting a war against collusion, wherever it might be and whoever is colluding out there. We know folks across the globe will be out there colluding, and we must stop them. We must stop them now. I mean, it's insane. So there really is no exit strategy. There is no end of war success, and no real possible way of winning. However, I don't think it was meant to be won.
But it's not a pushover, Dave, to just start going to other places. It's not like you.
I know.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's all right. It's meant, in my belief, to put the world on notice. It's a tacit threat of annihilation through sanctioning first and military dominance. Second, you're either going to play the way we tell you to play, or a newly discovered terrorist hotspot will be identified and suddenly located at your front door. Ding dong. Right?
Is that the drone calling?
Land shark. Additionally, the Constitution is pretty darn specific that only Congress can declare war. Enter stage right, the War Powers Act of 1973. This anti-American monstrosity was a way around the constitutional mandate, attempting to give the president and the president alone the power to declare war, to go to war, with the enemy of his choosing without dealing with Congress. Congressional approval is just too darn arduous for him to have to contend with. And I'd also like to note that when this treasonous garbage was making its way through our Congress, President Nixon vetoed it. Fearing basically the potential abuse that such power would have, but he was overridden and it passed anyway. Thus, the stage was set for the play we see today. And here's what I see today. A lot has been accomplished with the war on terror. For instance, we would not be subject to the Patriot Act and the utter violation of our Fourth Amendment rights had that war not started. Who would be there to monitor your formerly private conversations, Paul? We could have never had the tyrannical force backed with military power against our own citizens, were it not for the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security. We could not have been able to deploy the slated 30,000 Predator drones, and you and I spoke about that, that are going to be flying above your house, also armed. We would be missing out on airport groping from the TSA. That's going to soon morph into similar violations at sports events, public transportation, blah, 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 blah. And finally, with an omnipresent war at hand and no natural enemy, we have the freedom to attack anyone, anywhere, without a legal impediment in doing so. So clearly, there was a strong desire for a catalyst to panic the citizenry into agreeing or not agreeing to throw away their rights for the specter of stability. While it would be unconscionable for decent American people to want their country to behave in that regard, in my opinion, of course, despite our desires, the reality still is the reality. It is not pretty. I can very understand why people hold fast to the possibility that on 9/11, the power brokers in the U.S. basically shot their own foot. What you got to say?
Well, on something like that, Dave, you're chock full of things to talk about.
Well, Paul, that's why we give them such a great talk show here.
Right. Well, I tell you, when it comes to conspiracy, and this is George Bush's idea
that's the left's idea.
So your premise, you start your premise, I think, on shaky ground. No pun intended.
It's not my. It's cute. It's not my premise. It was a premise. But I asked you, if you would, to look at the results. Look at what the war on terror brung. It's not cool by any stretch.
Agreed.
Finally, had to hammer you over the head.
Well, I just hear the music. I'm not going to go into this. We'll have to pick this up next week.
Well, you hear the music. I need you to see the lights, sir. This has been the David Lehman Show. We were very happy to have you with us. We will see you next week right here, exclusively on WJUL Radio News Talk.
Listen and you did just overcross.